Hello, everyone. Welcome to our every 3-week meeting of Stand Up for Lower Merion and Narberth. Today, I'm Adrienne Seltzer, for those of you who might not know. Annie Dennison, who is my partner in Stand Up for Lower Merion and Narberth, is also on the call. And today we'll be discussing Lower Merion's school district's equity policy and the status of full-day kindergarten. Share. I want to first give you guys a peek at the, I'm going to screen share again. And, oh, I know what I should have done. Okay. One day I'm going to get really good at this. That's what I wanted to do. Okay. So I wanted to give you guys a look at the equity policy that Lower Merion School District will be voting on at the next school board meeting. So we'll share the screen again. One day it'll be seamless. And can you guys see? I'll do the purpose here, which is the policy. And Shayna, you'll correct me if I have a detail wrong, would you please?
Sure.
Is committed to providing a safe, supportive, and inclusive learning environment for all people. The district's also dedicated to ensuring that all students and employees have equitable access to the district's educational programs and activities. It says all the right things in here, as far as I'm concerned. The only issues I had was how it was going to be implemented and whether there would be any accountability. So I went to the policy meeting at 8:30 in the morning. I set my alarm because I'm usually not up at that time. And some of the things that they have in here, which I thought was really important, and they are going to put it in with the policy, is the definitions and glossary of other relevant terms. Because what I find in my anti-racist work and work with the NAACP is that usually the complaints that people have about any of these policies has to do with them having a different definition of those policies than the school or the institution. So I think having definitions and a glossary of other relevant terms is a really, really important step to communication, because then everyone is speaking in the same language. And so I was really impressed that they were doing that. And it has all these, I'll put a link to this. In fact, what I'll do is I'll download it and I'll put a link to this in the next email that we send out, which will give you also the, it will also give you the link to the video that we're recording right now. So it's pretty complete. And then the other part that I liked was the delegation of responsibility, so that the superintendent will be responsible for doing this, And it was much better going to a committee meeting than it was going to a school board general meeting, because there's no room for conversation at a general meeting. And I basically now feel that I have to get up early and go to these meetings rather than do a Monday evening meeting, because it's after the fact at that time. And I think the more people know that, the less frustration they will have with the school board. So, does anybody have any questions? Do you,
I'll just pop in to say that there is, it's having a second reading on the 14th. So if anybody has any comment that they would like to make at the policy committee, you can pop in on that 8:30 policy committee meeting on the 14th, where they'll be doing a second reading where the equity policy would then be recommended to the full board to be voted on.
yes, and at the policy meeting, you can actually make comments and get a response. It's really good. And it does leave a lot of the frustration that I would feel going to a meeting when you don't have a chance to like come back with a response to the answer if you got one. And especially if they misunderstood your question, so you didn't have a chance to go back. This way, you do have a chance to have a back and forth. And I just wish they were more convenient for people who are not having to get their kids out to school, or now, at that time in the morning. But I
know my
realize,
kids are 3 and 7. I am juggling that myself as well, but they make the schedule a year in advance. And so that's why they tend to be less flexible at the time.
right, well, maybe that's something you can help with.
I have suggested it in the past, yes.
Okay, it sounds good. All right, I'm gonna leave this one and some.
Adrian, can I just echo what you were saying? I think I've been going to more of the committee meetings, and it's interesting because if you make it, and I've been trying, even though it's hard, if you make it to most of the committee meetings and then you attend a school board meeting, the school board meeting it's pretty boring, because you've been through all of it. You've heard it all. You've been able to be part of the conversations.
Yeah, you see that there's actually, not one voice like
right.
they do at the meetings, that there are questions, there are back and forths.
What I would love to see with it, I know the time is tricky, but I think the two things that I feel like it would be helpful for the community too, to be able to be more involved, is first of all to have documents up on board docs sooner, so we can read that stuff and show up to the committee meetings with questions in hand. If we have a question about something on the list of bills for the finance, all of those things. And also if they can be recorded, because even if someone can't make the meeting, if they can find the time later to listen to the meeting and then have the opportunity to email the board, if they have some input that they would like to share, I would love to see those changes happen.
Oh,
because
yes.
I think that, like Sarah mentioned in the chat, like it's a tough time, and there's no perfect time for any of these meetings, because we all have a lot going on. But I think that those are ways that we can really, have to dig less for the stuff that we care about as parents and just community members.
Yes, and if the calendar, I totally agree, Sandra. And if the calendar would have, like for the ad hoc committee meeting, there is a link to that actual meeting on the calendar. And you can, but all the committee meetings don't necessarily have links. You've got to go into board docs and find them, which makes it inaccessible for a lot of people. Because unless you have a lot of experience in board docs, it's ridiculous to try and navigate. We just put a whole ton of stuff on your plate, Shayna.
Well, so what I can tell you is that there have been conversations about the possibility of recording committee meetings. I know a lot of the feedback we have gotten is that knowing that a meeting is recorded can sort of limit what people are willing to say in public or say in these meetings. And so we have gotten some of that feedback, and that's part of the consideration. It's not something that's been set in stone one way or the other, but that's just something we've been hearing. As for the links in the calendar, I am not tech savvy enough to know how easily, no, Tanya, the public, people attending, not feeling comfortable. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. Tanya asked, does the recording limit the public or the directors?
No, this is from community members who were saying they would not feel as free to speak if a meeting was being recorded. I'm not saying this speaks for everybody. This is just impromptu conversations that people have had. It is not set in stone one way or the other, and it's certainly a discussion. Let me get through the second part and then I will read what you're saying, Tanya. Give me one sec. As for the meeting links available for the calendar, I don't know how feasible that is. It sounds like a great idea, and it is something that I can absolutely suggest, because it seems to me that if it's an easy thing, that's something we can set up. I know it's through 2 different systems, I believe, but I can ask about that for sure. And let me see what you were saying, Tanya, sorry. So there, I don't know about
I guess,
private
so
comments.
for example, as somebody who's been attending the meetings, if I want to ask something privately, I can send the question to Denise LaPera ahead of time, or send it to one of the directors so that it's kind of anonymized. But the problem is that when I report out to other people what happened, it's kind of hearsay. If I got it wrong, sometimes Shelby and I are the only public source of what happened at the facilities meetings. And I don't think that's fair to the rest of the public, that they're relying on 2 unelected citizens to relay the information from those meetings. And the other
I hear
thing,
you. And
the other thing is that they don't post some of the materials until the meeting starts. So we can't review it ahead of time and come prepared with questions, because they post it at 8:30. Oftentimes they add things to the agenda at 8:30 as well. So if it's something, when people look back, they go, oh, well, it was on the agenda. We knew that was going to be discussed, but that's not really true, because it wasn't even posted the night before. So Shelby checks the morning of the meetings and then blasts out to people, or Adrian does it. Like, there's a group of very active citizens who've stepped in to relay the information to the public that the directors are locking down. And they're saying it's because it prevents us from speaking at the meetings. But like,
I get your point.
I don't see any evidence of that, since there's so many other ways of providing private comments.
We could do it right here. If you go into chat,
Yep.
right here, just so people know, you can go to the participants, and it says to everyone, and there's a little down arrow, and then you could send a private message to anybody in the chat.
so as for the materials, would it be sufficient for preparation for the agenda items to be there, even if the presentations aren't necessarily available? Because I know what happens. I honestly am not always sure what's showing up on the public side versus my side, like when that's showing up, because I log into board docs because I have access to things like community comments, which I read every day. And just in case anybody's wondering, all of us, we read the community comments, and we read them within a very short period of time of when they get uploaded to us. But so
they're making a deliberate decision to release it to you guys, but lock it down from public view until the meeting starts. So you guys get the list of bills on Tuesday. We don't see it until Thursday morning.
We don't get it that far in advance.
You
Oh,
We're
should.
not getting it several days in advance.
They told us it was 2 days. Okay, but yeah, the morning of is when they're posting the list of bills.
Okay, I mean, I can absolutely relay your concerns.
Okay, so what I would like is both Zandra and Tanya to stay after the meeting, and we can put a list together of things that are good, and then we can send it to the whole board. And then Shayna can be our little advocate for that, for us there. How does that sound? Okay, Sarah has a question.
How does this all stay in line with the law? Honestly, like there should be public access to all of this. It should be publicly available. And by not having recordings and not having all of this information, how is that in line with public access? Also, giving the public the information right before, how is that in line with sunshine laws? Shouldn't that be publicly available within a certain time frame before the meeting? And I might be reading the law wrong, but my understanding was there should be more public access than what the school board is providing.
Yeah, I know, they told me that one of my first arguments, I think with Denise LaPara, was about why aren't we getting this stuff earlier? And she said, well, it's not prepared. I said, well, you guys run a school district. You expect students to get stuff in at a certain time. Why can't we expect the same of the administration? Never got an answer to that, but still, let's continue on. And anyone who would like to stay after to discuss this, we can do that. Another thing I wanted to, that's that one. Wait a minute, I'll find the right thing. So I've been requesting a list of, this is going back to the trees in the fields. I requested a list of properties that Lower Merion owns to see if there was anything available where some fields could be built to help alleviate the problem with 1800 Montgomery Avenue. Lower Merion owns 172 properties. Okay. The only problem is I could only find it by going through the list of public records. And then you have to like look up each address and to figure out where it is, and go from there to see if it's appropriate. So it's a lot of work to look through. I could really use some help with that. And if you would like to help with that, I would appreciate that. Because then maybe we can give some ideas for already owned township. Like the Idlewild Farm Preserve is just open fields. And I'm sure a baseball field could fit there, and you could still keep all the trees and everything else around it. So, but there's probably a reason that they didn't. Gladwin Park looks a little too small, but there's actually a baseball field there. So I think that going through would be helpful. Okay, no, that's for, this was for something else. We'll throw this in stuff. I can't just throw it. Okay, that's done. So what else do we have in chat? Okay, let's go and let Shayna go. because I think we've covered the other stuff that we wanted to. And I am going to stop my share.
I apologize for any background noise. My kids just got back from the pool, so I'm sorry about that. So for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Shayna Kalish, and I am a Lower Merion School Director. One of my particular goals on the school board has been working to expand the current half-day kindergarten program to full day. So I wanted to start by giving a brief overview of the kindergarten landscape as it is and how it'll be changing in the coming school year. So kindergarten is a half-day offering for our general education students. Currently, there are 2 paths to full-day kindergarten programs in the district. First is students with IEPs, which is an individualized education plan. When they have those prior to entering kindergarten, those students are given supports to match their needs in the balance of the day when they're not in their general education class. And the second is through the extended day kindergarten program, which started in 2013. As part of the district's equity efforts, gifted education screening is now universal. It's given to every student, and it's conducted earlier in the kindergarten and first grade classes. So as part of that process, children, and in concert with their teachers, children who are having issues or difficulties with literacy acquisition skills can be offered entry into that extended day kindergarten program. That program works specifically on scaffolding literacy skills and providing reading and writing supports. Because it's dependent on in-class evaluation, the program has historically begun in February, but starting in 2019, the program was accelerated to start in December to give a longer length of supports for those kids. So LMSD is engaged in a lot of work on racial equity, inclusion, and anti-racism, which if you want to see some more of that, there's a lot of links available at lmsd.org/equity. So we talked at the beginning of the meeting about the equity policy, which I know Adrian is going to provide for you all. If you want to look it up right now, and you have access to board docs, you can look at the most recent policy committee meeting, which is 6-4, and the full text is attached to item 4A. So I want to highlight specifically the section that reads, quote, "Equity is distinct from equality. While equity entitles that everyone gets the same, equity requires that individuals get what they need," end quote. So as part of our equity efforts, the district has been focused on data collection and analysis to identify the origins of the achievement gap and measures that we could and should take to close it. That's been ongoing work that there's been a lot of effort put into. So through that process, full day kindergarten was identified as a means of tackling achievement and opportunity gaps upon entry into school. So based on our metrics, our African-American/Black subgroup has had the largest achievement gap, and our economically disadvantaged group also shows a large gap. Over half of our African-American Black students qualify as economically disadvantaged. By graduation, student college attendance for that African-American Black student group is almost on par with their peers. But because early extended day education, sorry, I wrote it in the acronym and I'm saying it wrong. Extended day kindergarten has been an effective intervention, but the gaps I talked about begin to emerge by second grade. The district decided to explore how full day kindergarten and other early learning supports could be established beyond the current offerings that we have in the district. So we really wanted to target that period in kindergarten and first to really to try and close that gap before it ever showed up. So based on the racial makeup and percentage of free and reduced lunch populations at each elementary school, which if you look at what Adrian's sharing right now is the slide from the presentation at the curriculum committee meeting this past Wednesday, that has a breakdown of certain subgroups that we have at various elementary schools in the district. So Belmont Hills, Penn Valley, and Penn Wynne were selected as sites for a new full day kindergarten program aimed at closing the achievement gap at the outset. The program, which is now tentatively being called K+, I believe is what was decided on, is slated to begin this fall. So K+ will consist of about 12 to 15 students per school based on the needs of the students and the specific makeup at each school community. As part of the effort to begin the program as early as possible, screening is going to take place prior to school beginning. So whereas the EDK program, they're screening in that fall semester, this screening is all going to take part over the summer. So the program can start in September at the beginning of the school year. And it is planned to start this year. Students will be identified through a kindergarten screening that'll be administered to all students in those schools over the summer. The program will be focused in the 3 schools based on the intersection of our economically disadvantaged subgroup, African American, Black, and Hispanic subgroups. So historically, the major blocks to establishing universal full-day kindergarten in the district have been cost and space. Every time I've brought it up to somebody, every time, we don't have a place to put it, we don't have the money. But kindergarten, so K+ is going to be funded through the ESSR 3 grant, which is through, it's federal grant money from COVID, I believe, through the CARES Act. And that will be fully funded through that grant for the first year, and then it's a 3-year grant, so it'll be tapering off how much of the program is funded through the grant, so that we don't end up at the end of the grant time and say, oh no, we don't have money to fund this. So we're planning to phase the cost of this program into the budget over those 3 years. And I know in your meeting notes, it said that we were going to vote on this particular program at the next business board meeting.
I thought it was the equity thing you were going to vote on at the next board meeting.
Right, it was in your description for the meeting. It said that we would vote on this, and I just wanted to be clear.
I meant the equity one, not this one.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
If I wrote it wrong, I'm sorry.
I saw that and I was getting in touch with people. Are we voting on this? I didn't think we were voting on. So just to be clear, this is being voted on as we approve the paperwork that we're submitting to the state and federal governments for use of that ESSR 3 grant. So just to be clear, that's how this program will be getting voted on. Also, so that's the money. Principals at the 3 host schools have all been consulted and agreed that they have the physical space to house this program. So a little bit about the program, the design is working to align with the student-driven goals of the strategic plan. So the design team is grounding the program in evidence-based, play-based learning. This increases student involvement and engagement through play-based learning experiences in kindergarten. Whereas the extended day kindergarten specifically targets literacy skills, K+ is working to close that early achievement gap by focusing on general school readiness and holistic academic skills to make sure that all the kids in this program are on par with their peers and going forward on an even footing at the point where before that point where we're seeing the gap start to widen. So that's all I've prepped. I'm happy to take your questions. I just want to put in a little marker that this program was only presented to the curriculum committee of the board this past Wednesday. So it is very new and I don't have all the answers on it, in part because I don't know everything about it and in part because not everything is decided. The planning, curricular and curricular design and screening process are still very much in progress. So there are aspects that I might not be able to explain because they just haven't been decided yet.
Sarah asked the first question in the chat and I see Tanya and Mark then also have their hands up.
So I guess the first question is, say you have 16 kids, 17, 18 kids who qualify, but you've cut it off at 15. What about the kids who don't get a spot? Because
I don't think it's a specific 12 to 15. That's a hard out. I think that number is a projection based on the enrollment numbers, the projected enrollment numbers, and the breakdowns of the subgroups that they're trying to target with the program, there is inherently some flexibility built into that. It's not going to be like, it's not going to be a situation where if we have 16 kids and had planned 15 spots in that classroom, that kid that needs it won't get access to the program.
Okay, and then how are you going to situate it in Penguin specifically when we're so overcrowded to have more full day? And I'm full in support of this program, just so you know. I'm just trying to figure out how this impacts Penguin and the overcrowding issues and all of that.
Okay, so I will fully admit that I was not privy to the discussions on space with the principal of Penguin. That is not something that I had covered, but I do know that the thinking is that there will likely be some overlap between who would normally have been in that extended day kindergarten program. And so that would free up some space from that group to focus on this program instead. As they're talking about specific rooms, I honestly could not tell you in terms of physical footprint, but I do know that the principals were consulted. They evaluated their space, and at Penguin, they did say that they would have the space to house the program.
So if kids are overlapping, then how are you, because you're focused on play base in one program and you're focused on literacy skills in the other program, how are the kids who are overlapped then getting both things?
So I think they sort of go hand in hand. It's an approach difference, but also these kids that would be falling in both situations, it's not like they would go from one to the other. They would be starting in that new K+ program from the very start. And so the hope is that with that extra academic support from the very beginning, that their academic readiness would affect their literacy readiness and their ability to then pick up those literacy skills that they might have otherwise had a harder time with in their general education classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Tanya?
I know that you have championed the idea of full day kindergarten, and you have been told it is there's significant hurdles. I mean, my back of the envelope is it would take 30 more classrooms and teachers, probably about $4 or $5 more million per year. And I understand for the last year or two, there has been the administration's operations team has had a significant focus in their meetings on 4 topics: the opening of 1860, the new middle school playing fields, Arnold Field lights, and of course, COVID. I guess where I'm wondering, knowing that this is a passion of yours, to go for the big lift, to go for this, to get past it's too hard, it's too much. How can we as a community help get 5 directors to put this on the agenda? Because it is hard and it is a lot, but right now it hasn't even been on the facilities agendas for the last year or two when it comes to the moonshot, right? The discussion of how to get $4 million in 30 classrooms hasn't been in a public meeting until you just did this today. This is the first time it's going to be discussed with the public. Is there any way we can support you in saying it's hard, but we need to start talking about it, unless we're deciding we're just not, that we're going to wait a year to start?
So I will say that what I can tell you what I've been doing, and we can kind of do that. So when I was first elected, so just for context, I was elected in November of 2019. I was sworn in December, and COVID happened in March of 2020. So in that first initial period during the campaign, and then afterwards, I was trying to work my network to try and find out, to try and talk to people who are serving in other Pennsylvania districts, and to talk to other people. I know when I went to an event with Mary Gay Scanlon, I was like, hey, this is a thing I'd like to make happen. Do you have a person I could talk to? So I've been trying to sorry, my neighbor's dog had a comment. I've been trying to work my network. Admittedly, I have not pushed that in the last year in my network or in the district because a global pandemic was a big deal. Getting through this last year was a massive lift. And then now with it's not only the new middle school, it's the reorganization, and it's a whole like reassessment of the curricular design for the new K4, 5, 8. So I knew I wasn't going to win any favor by putting another complicated thing on somebody's list right now. That said, as that stuff is coming to fruition, now is when I'm trying to pick it back up a little. So the thing I'm trying to keep a real interest on is what the space looks like once we make the new middle school transition, and seeing like how the space frees up at the different places, because the less of a lift it is, the more likely we are to make it happen.
I guess what all of
You're
it,
asking how,
but like they were discussing that in 2018. There's 50 new classrooms going into 2018. They looked at the demographic reports. That was all, and it felt like whatever happened in 2018 when it came to full day kindergarten, it got, I don't know if it was ignored, forgotten, discarded, but to hear you say that you as the director are doing this because no one in the administrative staff has been giving you those numbers, it seems shockingly unfair to me that the staff hasn't been crunching those numbers and providing it to our leadership. And my bias is, I just can't believe that their time instead has been spent on football lights instead of this. It's just, I question whether or not the administration has aligned their efforts with the priorities of this community.
I hear you. And I don't really want to get into an argument about football life. I will say that for my 2 cents, I will stick up for the administrators in that it is, in my every interaction with them, it is a group of people that is incredibly hardworking and incredibly dedicated to the success of the students in our district. And I feel very sorry that that's not something that is always felt by our community. And I understand that everybody has reasons to feel that way. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't or that your feelings are invalid in any way. I just sort of sit in the middle of that, and I see that everybody really cares, and it makes me kind of like, I'm never quite sure how to bridge that gap, except to say that on both sides, everybody cares a whole lot and is working really hard. As for what you can do to sort of like, I'm trying to think of the right colloquialism and I can't, my brain is broken on that, but just to sort of make it a priority is when you go to a meeting, when you go to a facilities meeting, when you go to a curriculum meeting, and you ask a question, you say, this is a priority for me. How is the work in this committee being aimed towards that? It's one of those things where if it becomes a community priority, it moves higher up. And I think as COVID sort of
dissipates,
yeah, sort of gives us some of the oxygen back in the room. Like it was without exaggeration, COVID was an emergency. And as we have a little bit of breathing room and can handle the situation better now, that there's more room for other priorities. And so if you have the opportunity to express those priorities, then that gets noted.
Just like those few voices that said they didn't want the recordings recorded, if we had more voices saying, yes, we want those recordings recorded, yes, we want those meetings recorded, and yes, we want full day, I'm going to get to you in a second, Mark, I'm sorry. Yes, we want full day kindergarten. It's a priority that our district wants, then maybe that's a way that you can support. And by coming to meetings like this and talking with the public is really a way to increase that thing you were talking about. I can't think of the word either, but that it just shows that the board is actually willing to work with the community. And we appreciate that. Next, Mark.
Hi, Shayna. Thanks for your time. Tanya mostly preempted my question. I was just going to ask what you thought the prospects were for universal full-day kindergarten. The only thing I would add is that, in the corner of the district that I'm more familiar with, the LMS there's tremendous appetite for full-day kindergarten. And so I think it's almost an expectation among some parents that when the new middle school opens, that's one of the reasons why they built the new middle school. Whether that's accurate or not, I don't know. But I think there's a lot of almost an assumption, really, by some parents that moving fifth grade from the elementary school level to middle school to free up space, of course, combats the over enrollment problem that we have, but also makes it feasible for full day kindergarten to take place. So really, I was just going to ask you what you thought how feasible is it? What are the prospects going forward? And what can we do to help, obviously?
You couldn't pay me $1 million to make predictions about anything that happens in this township.
It's very smart.
I honestly don't know. I see an opportunity, and one of the things that I'm really interested in is seeing where the enrollment shakes out after the new middle school opens and after COVID comes down and people aren't choosing virtual options. So with COVID, we had an interesting shift in our enrollment because we had been on a trajectory. So since 2008, when the recession happened, we got a massive portion of the private school students into our district. And so we were actually the fastest growing district in the state, I think by double. And so projecting where our enrollment was then, and then to have COVID happen, it's very hard to see what our numbers are going to be like that. But so I am very interested in seeing what our enrollment numbers are both after COVID and with the new middle school and the new distribution. And that's something that if the space frees up, it's always easier when there's one aspect of something to push on.
Right.
So I can't promise you one way or the other. I don't know one way or another. I honestly don't even have a hunch one way or another. I know that it is a personal priority, and these are the places that I see opportunity for it. And it's something that I'm going to be working towards. And so that is what I have for you on that. I'm sorry.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
So that means all those people that you said were assuming that full day kindergarten is going to be a thing has to write to the school board.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
No, and that's a good point. And we spent a lot of time and a lot of energy, advocating for our position or our stance or whatever you want to call it vis-a-vis school reopening. And a lot of people were just very tired. And there were parents on the other side of that issue from us, and we contended with them, and they're very tired too. I mean, we've come out of something that's been very taxing, and so to have like another big issue, and then there's start times, that hasn't been resolved yet, and there are some big ticket items, and it's difficult to get parents to mobilize But I think that Adrian, you make a great point that, the assumption that it was just going to happen, that needs to be kind of tempered with a little bit of reality that we need to make it happen. And I think, a good place to start is maybe I've developed some contacts out in Radnor. Radnor has, of course, full day kindergarten, and maybe see if we can get some data. They've had it for a few years now, so they should have, and their data people are first rate, so they should have some pretty good information that we
Yeah,
could
I was
present.
talking with one of their school board directors last year about their new kindergarten and how they did that. So my sort of personal networking goal is to really focus in the next year on making connections with directors and administrators at districts that have been able to make this switch, and to just like have them tell me their story. Like, I just want to listen to people and be like, okay, what was your situation? How did you make this work? Like, just honestly, ideas are hard. Good ideas are hard. Like, if somebody has had it already, if somebody's come across something that's really worked for them, then that's something I'm really excited to hear. So that is where I'm going, and I'm definitely happy to hear from the community. I would urge people, if you want to email the board, to email community comments, because that is the way that all 9 board members see the email that you send, because that is distributed to the full board.
Mm-hmm.
And might I suggest, this is one of the reasons that Annie and I, we started Stand Up for Lower Merion and included Narberth, was to let people know, so it's not just after the fact seeing all their complaints on Facebook. If they would spend that much time writing a letter, an email beforehand, then they might not have to complain on Facebook after the fact. So that's
one of the most effective things we did, to your point, Adrian, with LMSDIP is I actually wrote letters for the parents that they could, use as a template, not just copy paste. Because I was getting feedback from people. My days are double booked. I don't have time. I'm just exhausted. The kids are home all day. Could you write a letter? I wasn't just as exhausted as anybody else, but I'm kind of a loudmouth. So
join the club.
Exactly. Templated materials, like not position paper, but just little letters that people it jogs their imagination, and they can add their own stories and their own points. It just helps
Mark,
get them going.
If you have one of those templates, email it to us, and we'll include it in our mailing list that goes out to, we're close to 300 people now.
Well, I have them for full in-person school. I don't think that's going to be very helpful for this. And that's pretty long. I'll send it. I mean, I'm happy to send you that material so you can kind of see what we were doing.
Okay.
I could.
And then maybe we can
come up
work
with
with a couple people and edit it for full day kindergarten, or another issue that, or the trees or the fields or whatever.
Yeah, I'm supposed to talk with somebody in Radnor about their hiring of a special education attorney, and this person.
We saw that.
This person is also was integral in their full day kindergarten. Maybe I'll just steal 5 minutes from him to see if he has any, because I really think that that's a good. There, like Shayna, like you mentioned, there are districts in this area that have done this, like Phoenixville. I'm blanking on the others, but this is not a wheel that has to be reinvented.
Zandra's question, because we're headed towards. But thank you. Yeah.
Sorry.
Some good ideas.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, Shayna, when you were talking about, because I think a lot of us are, when you were talking about how you're interested in seeing what the numbers look like when they shake out after the transition with the new school, it's another place where I just want to ask for more transparency from the board and the administration about that, because I know when the 4 plans for the middle school transition were shared in the committee, I think it was at the board meeting. No, it was a committee meeting. I asked if they could share the numbers for all of the plans, because the only numbers they shared with the public were for the plan that they were pushing for. I was really curious to see if we keep 8th graders in the school where they are now, for example, I guess current 6th graders, if they stay where they would be for 8th grade, is it a difference of 10 students over capacity, or is it 30 or 40 students over capacity? The public didn't have that information. And then Mr. Lee asked that at the full board meeting, and I was like, oh, somebody else is asking this question. That's great. And there was because Mr. Copeland just kind of dismissed me. He said, oh, we'll look into that. And I never heard anything. And it came up again. And I think somebody maybe rattled off a number, but it wasn't in a way that was, we couldn't really tell what it was. We didn't see what those numbers are. So I think as we shift into this conversation, hopefully about full day kindergarten, and we're looking at those numbers, making sure that the public doesn't have to really push for that stuff, because those are, again, it's those little micro things. It would not have to, they must have had the numbers, or they wouldn't have had the data to decide which plan they wanted to go for. So to take that extra step to throw it on a slide to let people know, or, you know, to be able to say, okay, we know the community cares about full day kindergarten. A year or two now, we've been in the shift to K-4, and we have the new middle school set up. This is what the numbers are looking like. If we were able to expand this new K+ program to be maybe, because it sounds like it's maybe 1 classroom worth of kids for each of these schools, could we expand it to 2? How can we continue to grow that? Maybe that's the way, and actually be able to have the numbers to look at. I want to kind of encourage, maybe you can kind of nudge for, like, we can be transparent with these numbers, because the public deserves to have them. So I just wanted to, sorry, that was long-winded.
No, I understand. And that, I mean, there is currently a big push to really make use of our data and do good analysis to inform our steps going forward in the next couple of years. And so that is absolutely something I can bring to my colleagues.
Adrian, can I jump in real fast? I have studied
Tanya got her 2 cents in a split second before you did, and Janice also has something in the chat that I would like to do first. Okay.
I'll forward to you. I actually used the 10-day report for all 6 elementary schools. The last 10-day report that was publicly released talked about the cohort, the size of each grade per elementary school. I extrapolated that to figure out what the size of the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade would be at Bala Kindred Middle School if 7th and 8th grade remained, and then how that would work the next 2 years rolling out. They fit with a bit of a squeeze, but it would be squeezy, but no higher than, it would only be, I think it was 47 students higher than what the school was anticipated to be when they first mapped it out before 1860 came to be. So they did have a plan to fit that many students in. I have the numbers. I've confirmed with someone at the school that they are fairly accurate, and I'm happy to share them. I've written to Denise LaPera and asked her for the numbers that the school board used to make their decision. I have not heard back from her. I'm happy to share this. And then whenever the school board provides the same numbers, we can replace them and use it. But for lack of anything better, the data was out there to dig around and get. So sorry, I'll forward that to Adrian right now.
Okay, thanks. Janice, who's in the car, who can't speak, said, many thanks for your time and service and your willingness to be here. Wondering if you have any ideas how to build more of a partnership with parents. The superintendent's survey, we feel a strong feeling of lack of transparency and community cooperation. And as I was in the care meeting, when I brought that up, I was in a breakout room with administration. They said, no, that's not true. But it was in the survey.
So I don't have every solution to this problem, like a problem that people have strong feelings about is clearly one that one person hasn't been able to fix. So my effort on this is to do things like being here, is to talking to people, to meet people where I can, to really engage people at committee meetings, as my service on the ad hoc committee, which was a volunteer committee because that wasn't the way the board works. We're assigned to a certain number of committees and that committee was created. And so that actually increased my committee loads, but I did it voluntarily because I am part of this community and I want to be with my community members and hear what you're saying and work for you and work with you. That said, I can't fix everything. I will do my best to keep putting the right foot forward, both with myself and to hold my colleagues accountable in that manner. But I don't know that I have.
This also might be really good questions for the candidates that are running for school board, to see which ones will help with that. So, all right, candidate forum in our future. Anything else? Anyone else have any questions? Oh, Shayna, I think we did a couple things. I had a couple questions that I put up here with.
Adrian, Mark had something too that we wanted to get back to.
What's that?
Mark had something that he
Oh,
wanted.
yeah, I'm sorry,
Very-
Mark.
That's
Thanks.
fine. Very, very quickly. The Montgomery County did an enrollment report with the district in 2015. And I don't remember if they had projections for kindergarten. Is everybody familiar with that report? Have you all read that, seen it?
I have, I know Tanya has.
Yeah, I figure Tanya's very good on data. Those could be useful numbers. I have misplaced it. I thought I had it in a location, but I'll look for it. That was the only point I was going to make back when we were talking about.
Okay.
those
Oddly,
kinds
they haven't ordered it yet for last year or this year. And the census report, we used to be able to go into the census report and just grab the cohort, birth cohort
Right.
data
Right.
straight by zip code, but they've now smoothed out the data and fuzzied it for many reasons that are valid. But it is now, it's harder for us to just go grab the data ourselves
Right.
now. At least I can't do it anymore. Somebody can.
Okay. I had heard in the past, it's probably not this way, that the full day kindergarten that we had for certain students was just the same class over again. It was like they went to a morning class and then they went to an afternoon class. Was that okay? That's a good enough answer. And is there a difference between play-based and project-based? Because I've seen data on the project-based stuff. Maybe it's called play for younger students.
So I don't think they are the same thing. I will say that I have not done the literature review. I know that the administrators who are doing the curricular design for this program have done an extensive literature review, and that's how they came upon play-based learning. But I would also imagine that it has a lot to do with your age group, that doing play-based learning for juniors in high school is going to be not what's going to work for you, but trying to get like a coordinated group project for a bunch of 5-year-olds would be a little more complicated. So I think those are two different approaches.
Okay. I'm trying to, give me 1 second. I'm trying to save something. And all right, let's just save it to the desktop. Okay. Another question regarding district equity plans. That's not really one of your committees, is it? Shayna, are you on the ad hoc committee for racism?
I am.
Okay. The NAACP meeting recently had surrounding districts present their equity plans, and a couple districts had clearly stated goals for special education. Do you see an opportunity for something similar in Lower Merion?
Honestly, I haven't done enough preparation to make a comment one way or another. I wouldn't want to under promise or over promise in either direction.
Yeah, I know we're giving you you got a lot more than you bargained for when you came in.
And I did a
but,
fair amount of prep for kindergarten stuff. I've been working for hours for this meeting.
Okay. Oh, it looks like Sarah has an answer for me. But that's good. But I want to thank you for coming. And I thank everyone for their participation. If anyone wants to stay on for a little bit to discuss the tree thing or any other volunteer options you would like or strategies, please do. And I thank you all for your participation.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everyone, for